Before we begin, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Not because of hype, not because of trends, but because here we speak the kind of truths people usually keep buried. Stories that don't just entertain you, they stay with you. Now listen carefully. There are certain truths in life that most people will never admit out loud, not because they are rare, but because they are uncomfortable. And one of those truths is this. Sometimes you don't become a different person in a single moment. You don't wake up one day and decide to change. You don't make one big mistake that defines everything. Instead, you change slowly, quietly, almost invisibly, through silence, through hesitation, through the things you don't say when you should, through the emotions you bury because dealing with them feels inconvenient. And one day, you realize something terrifying. You are no longer the person you once promised yourself you would always be. But by the time you realize it, it already feels too late to undo it, because the change didn't happen loudly. It happened in silence. And silence is where the most dangerous transformations begin. No one wakes up planning to ruin their life. No one opens their eyes in the morning and thinks, "Today I will destroy everything I have built." Life doesn't work that way. It is far more subtle, far more patient. It begins with ordinary mornings, ordinary routines, ordinary decisions that seem meaningless at the time. And then slowly, those ordinary moments begin to stack on top of each other, until one day you look around and don't recognize the life you are standing in anymore. The truth is, the most important moments in life never announce themselves. They don't come with warning signs. They don't feel like turning points when they are happening. They feel like nothing. Just another hour, just another day, just another conversation. And that is what makes them dangerous, because by the time you realize their importance, they are already memories. The day everything in my life began to shift felt completely ordinary, forgettable even, the kind of day that doesn't stand out in any way when you're living it. Soft daylight filtered through thin curtains, casting a pale glow across the room. Dust particles floated lazily in the air, drifting without purpose, like they had nowhere important to be. The house was quiet, but it wasn't the peaceful kind of quiet. It was the kind of silence that forms when people live under the same roof, but no longer truly live together emotionally. A silence that doesn't feel empty. It feels distant. My husband, Kareem, had already left for work. As always, early, focused, structured. A man built around responsibility. Over the years, his life had become a collection of obligations, work, meetings, deadlines, expectations, and somewhere along the way, he had stopped noticing how much space those obligations were taking away from everything else, from us, from the life we were supposed to be sharing. But he never saw it that way. To him, everything was just normal. And maybe that was the most painful part, because when one person slowly disappears emotionally while still being physically present, the other person learns to survive in a kind of invisible loneliness. That was my reality, and I had gotten used to it, or at least I told myself I had. That morning felt no different from any other, until something changed, until he came back. Ethan, Kareem's son from his previous marriage. He was 25, quiet in a way that didn't feel empty, but observant, the kind of person who doesn't speak unnecessarily, but notices everything anyway. His presence wasn't loud, it didn't demand attention, but somehow you always knew when he was in a room, because silence around him felt different. He had recently gone through a breakup, not the kind that ends with shouting or dramatic confrontations, not the kind people tell stories about. It was quieter than that, more gradual, more painful, the kind of ending that doesn't break you in one moment, but instead removes pieces of you slowly until you no longer feel like yourself. And after that, he returned home, not permanently, at least that's what everyone assumed, just for a while, to rest, to recover, to figure things out again. That's how Kareem explained it to me one morning without looking up from his phone, as if it were just another update, another detail, another temporary adjustment in routine. "Ethan will stay with us for some time," he said casually. No discussion, no preparation, no awareness that this small sentence would shift the entire emotional structure of the house. And just like that, everything changed. At first, nothing obvious happened. Life continued in its usual rhythm, but something subtle had shifted in the atmosphere.
Ethan and I moved around each other carefully, like two strangers sharing the same space but refusing to disturb it. There were polite greetings, brief exchanges, minimal eye contact, and an unspoken agreement between us to keep distance, not because of hostility, but because both of us understood something without saying it. Too much familiarity could create problems neither of us wanted. So we stayed careful, controlled, guarded. And for a while, that worked, or at least it seemed like it did. But silence has a strange nature. The more you try to control it, the more it reveals what is hidden underneath it. I told myself this arrangement was temporary, that Ethan would recover, that he would move on, that everything would eventually return to normal. I convinced myself of that so many times that I almost believed it. Almost. But life rarely respects the stories we tell ourselves to feel safe. And slowly, things began to shift again. Not dramatically, not suddenly, but quietly, like everything important always does. One afternoon, I was in my room getting ready for an upcoming formal gathering Kareem had insisted we attend. Another event, another obligation, another evening where I would have to pretend to be someone I wasn't entirely sure I still was. Clothes were scattered across the bed. Each dress felt wrong. Too tight, too loose, too loud, too lifeless. Nothing felt like it belonged to me anymore. It was as if I was trying to dress a version of myself that no longer existed. And I didn't even realize how deep I was in that thought until I heard a voice. Care. It stopped, abruptly. I turned. Ethan was standing at the door, frozen, as if he had stepped into a moment he wasn't supposed to see. For a few seconds, neither of us moved. It wasn't dramatic. There was no music, no soap, just stillness. Then embarrassment crossed his face, followed quickly by discomfort. "I'm sorry," he said quickly, stepping back, and he left. Just like that. The door closed, silence returned, but something inside the room didn't feel the same anymore. Nothing had actually happened, nothing wrong, nothing that could be named, nothing that anyone would consider important if it were told as a story. And yet, I stood there longer than I should have, my heartbeat louder than it should have been, my thoughts slower than they should have been. And that was the first time I understood something I didn't want to admit. Some moments don't need actions to matter. Some moments change you simply because they exist. From that day onward, I started noticing things I had never paid attention to before. Ethan's footsteps in the hallway, the sound of his presence moving through the house, the way silence shifted slightly when he entered a room. And I hated myself for noticing, because noticing meant awareness, and awareness meant responsibility. But I told myself it was nothing, just sensitivity, just overthinking, just adjustment. But deep down, I already knew that wasn't true. And the worst part was Kareem noticed nothing, or maybe he chose not to. "Ethan just needs time," he said one evening, still focused on his work. "He'll be fine." That was it. No deeper thought, no emotional reflection, just acceptance. And life continued. But between Ethan and I, something had started to change.